I'm Donnie Jeffcoat. I'm the owner and chief instructor of the Shaolin American Self-Defense Academy here in North Hollywood, California.
Fight commentary breakdowns here. I asked you guys if you guys wanted to see the footage I took of an American Kenpo place back in 2014 and 2015, and you guys all said yes. So, very brief history of how I met Donnie Jeffcoat. 2012, I was visiting LA, experimenting with whether I wanted to come to LA to potentially be a filmmaker, and I didn't feel like I was ready yet. I lived a block away from Donnie Jeffcoat's American Kenpo dojo, and I would pass by there all the time and be like, Shaolin American Self-Defense? That sounds like way too many hats. The title turned me off. So I didn't step into it until maybe my last week before I moved. When I stepped into that dojo, I realized what I was missing in my life because I didn't do martial arts for so long. I credit Donnie Jeffcoat, sincerely credit Donnie Jeffcoat with getting me back into martial arts. I didn't do martial arts in high school and college. It wasn't until after college, 2012, when I met Donnie Jeffcoat, that I got back involved in martial arts. And so I left LA, and then when I came back to LA in 2014, I contacted Donnie. I'm like, I gotta thank you for getting me back into martial arts. So I made this pretty good documentary about his dojo. Now, I'm bringing on Rob to watch this because it's 5 years later. In some ways, I'm thankful in 2012 I didn't step into that dojo earlier, because maybe if I did, I would have stayed in LA. I would have become like one of those like LA filmmaker dudes. And I would have become like a Kenpoist.
It's pretty fortunate that you walked into that one, because Los Angeles is like the land of martial arts schools.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, you could have walked into anywhere.
I wanted to show you guys some of the highlights. We're going to skip a lot of the interview stuff. You guys, if you really want to, you can find it on one of my other channels. Let's look at some of like the action parts where Donnie's teaching me some of like the really cool fundamentals of Kenpo.
As a chief instructor of a school, I have to be willing and able to individually fit and mold techniques to work for my students. So here is my neutral bow stance, based upon the natural human gait, my natural walk. That then allows me as a teacher to individualize the experience for each student, depending upon their height and their size. Right about there. Now, that's the middle of your heel, okay? Now, from that position, I want you to go ahead and stand up with me and let your body just pivot forward into position. Now, another way to measure your horse stance would be feet together, and you can simply do this. 1, 2, now straighten them out, and 3. Kenpo is about street self-defense. It's about what works for the individual's body type in the streets in real life situations. It does have a classical approach. So you're learning the beauty of the Kung Fu, the beauty of the martial arts that have been used for thousands of years. But we've also evolved past the classical into what we call practical and tactical. Push the heel away, there's your reverse bow. And then back to the neutral. Now reverse bow, a lot of times in Kenpo, is used to spread.
It's almost like this position in Wushu.
All of this is
except it's like reduced.
Okay, so let's go to Wushu. You know what a bow and arrow stance is, right?
Yeah, boom. Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, guess what this is? Bow and arrow. So why it's called a neutral bow? Well, these are bow and arrow. This is a bow and arrow stance. This is a bow and arrow stance. Look at this. Here's the bow. Here's the arrow. What is your width? What is your depth? What is your height? Everybody has an individual width, depth, and height. So the syllabus that I teach now really does break down scientifically one's anatomy.
I did Kung Fu for many years, and I was never able to figure out how to implement it right. And that's why I appreciate what Donnie did for me, because I had all these questions. I was frustrated with Kung Fu because I was not the right body type for Kung Fu. I kept getting hurt. But what Donnie was really good at showing me was, look, what American Kenpo is doing, and probably credit goes to a lot of Japanese Kenpo, it was taking a lot of those Shaolin Kenpo, those Chinese styles, and kind of just like, you know, modifying it, testing it more. Now, when it got to American Kenpo, it was trying to be even more quote-unquote practical or effective or whatever word you use. So that's what I really got from Donnie, and the way he's showing me, oh yeah, you know, the gongbu, the bow stance, this is how we use it in Kenpo. We're not going to have the stance that wide or that big, but we're still going to take some of the body mechanics from it and apply it. When you did Kajukenbo, did you guys start with the stances and all that stuff too?
Stances were a starting point. The other thing was, there was a lot of mental training. Stand in the horse stance, and it's basically you're just like doing a squat, and you're just sort of holding it, and then your legs are strengthening, and then you're supposed to like stare at one point at the wall or something like that, and just hold it. As a kid, you're like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
But it actually has phenomenal training in the sense that like your attention span, it increases because you're like focused, you're holding it. And so now it's like our attention span is so short.
Yeah.
But if you can hold something for 60 seconds, like you're way more advanced than the majority of the, modern population.
Yeah. Thinking about that, potentially the reason why I actually did very well in school was because since I did Kung Fu in elementary school and middle school, I was able to focus, right? In Kung Fu, we did many of the same things like hold your horse stance or hold your bow stance. A lot of times we would have our bow staff, we would hold it by the thinner end, so it would be like a weight, and we'd have to do the horse stance and hold it.
Yeah, we would have to hold our hands like out, like all of a sudden your arms are just trembling. Just holding it out there. Another thing that we would do is we were constantly building certain weapons. In like Muay Thai, you deaden the nerves in your shin and you create those little micro fractures. Kajukenbo, what you would do is you would do knuckle push-ups constantly, and you would hit a board. You would hit a board so often that your knuckles would intensify, they would grow, they would calcify, and you would have these like monster weapons. As a kid, I was doing finger push-ups, and these fingers were so incredibly like strong, and the intention for that was to be able to rake across someone's eyes.
The person who filmed this segment, the segments where I was on camera, was Tony Elias. If you guys are familiar, he's an actor in LA too. I gotta give him credit. And the other reason I mentioned Tony was because the first Kenpo lesson I ever took under Donnie, Tony and I were actually partnered, and we were practicing blocking. And I remember we were both like, oh, because we didn't have the deadened nerves, like Rob said. So, even with the angles, you're still bone against bone, right? So both Tony and I were like, oh.
My Kajukenbo instructor was a guy named Mike Kiefer, and he had the densest forearms I think I've ever seen, even to this day. And there was one guy that we called Tree Trunk, and he was a massive individual. It was from constantly, just training in the sense that like you're hitting things, and it's just all this is just developing. It's like those iron monks that just like take a bean bag or whatever it is, or ball bearing bag, and they just smack their arms until this thing is just grows.
The other thing why I really wanted to get Donnie on camera was because he really was trying to cater the art for the person. When I did Kung Fu, I just felt like the person had to cater himself toward the art. There's this stereotype that all the Kung Fu people all look the same. Like, to be able to do Kung Fu in the right way, at least the type of Kung Fu I was doing, you basically had to have like shorter legs. My legs are not short, right? You had to have a body type, and I didn't have that body type. So it just felt like there's too much, like you had to bend your own body to look good. Whereas like why I saw the potential in American Kenpo is that the American Kenpo was adapted to everyone's individualistic kind of movements and their body shape and mechanics, etc. Next up, we're going to keep watching and look more at sort of Donnie teaching me some of the fundamentals.
This is called an angle of cancellation. If you were to go from 9 to 3 or 3 to 9, like a horizontal plane here, and catch me, I can slip, right? It's also put a little pressure against me here, okay? If you're not aligned correctly and I come at you, right? Now watch this. Align it properly with that. Now check this out. Let me ask you what shape this is. Point A, point B, point C. Triangle. There you go. A triangle is the what? Strongest geometrical shape. Now your proper muscles are activated. The triangle is the strongest geometrical shape. It represents mind, body, and spirit. All three sides to the triangle are equal. They help each other, right? So no matter which way you turn the triangle, all three sides are equally holding up the other two sides. So with mind being strong, body being strong, and spirit being strong, you have a very strong martial artist and human being. And if one is weaker than the other two sides are not supporting. So if there's an imbalance, the triangle collapses.
Geometry lesson, like Rob said. Equilateral triangles, equal sides of a triangle. And it's a really cool way to explain things. When I started with Kung Fu, in the very old days, I started Kung Fu when I was living in Chicago. A lot of our blocks were like 6 to 12 or 9 to 3, I think. There's 3 to 9 or whatever. But what's really cool about how I learned blocking in Kenpo, and again, I'm not saying I can do it well. It's really, I saw the theory of it, was that it's more about not just force to force, but also diverting the force in a way that you hurt them more than they hurt you. And that's what that clip showed. Donnie was showing me the blocking. It's not just, this way, right? When I learned blocking Kung Fu, it's either this or this. But Donnie was like, nope. And you see, it's you had to form a triangle. It was a really cool kind of like neat little imagery to think about the block and how to hurt them without hurting yourself. And also, the leverage, right? The word there is leverage. He's teaching me this also, it activates the right muscle so he can't push into me.
The triangle analogy goes throughout a lot of different things. It's also your connection to the ground. So like if your back foot is connected 60 degrees to the ground or whatever it is, you're going to have more stability in the sense that you're going to be able to push up against it. Now, do you necessarily want to push up against them? That's the other question. Who knows? But triangles also go into jiu-jitsu as well. If you look at Damian Maia's top game, the way once he gets someone down to the ground, he is, and Marcelo Garcia also does this, he has a triangle. He's a triangle base. He's always on 2 points, and the third point is putting the center of gravity directly down into his opponent.
It's really neat that this Kenpo triangle thing really can be applied.
Also, the reason why every single logo in jiu-jitsu has a triangle in it is because if you form any triangle with your body, whether it be with an arm and a leg, or arms and arms, or legs, you can choke somebody with that triangle. So if I'm doing a rear naked, I'm forming a triangle right here in my arms, that arm space. And when I close the gap of that triangle, that's where their neck is. And so that's a choke right there. And likewise, I can do that with an arm and a leg. I can also do that with just my legs. And any combination. I can form a triangle, here. I can choke somebody out with this right here, this gap here. Any way that you can be creative in a way that you can form a triangle and close that gap, you get a choke.
Shout out to Donnie, shout out to Tony. Let's keep watching.
We work in Kenpo on point of origin style attacks. So for instance, if you attack me, who's to say my arms are going to be in that perfect scenario? Very rarely. A lot of times in a surprise attack, my arms are down. Now hopefully as a martial arts artist being trained for as long as I have, I know not to talk with my arms down here against somebody I feel might be confrontation. I teach my students to talk with their hands. Why? Because it's very close to this. I teach my students to, keep their hands up on guard just in case. Okay? But let's say that I've let my guard down. Where does my palm strike go? I go from point of origin, following the order, straight up to the palm. So I have to then practice the power coming from the hip versus the classical ribs or up on position, guard position.
And I didn't even see
You didn't see it coming.
I didn't even see
Okay, so that's a very quick strike.
Rob was laughing because that was a Master Ken moment. He did smack me pretty hard in the chin. So you even heard it on camera. What I really like about this segment is that, we always talk about fighting in the ring versus fighting in real life, right? This is one of those moments where it's showing, at least the theory of American Kenpo is there are a lot of encounters you're going to have where you're not going to have your gloves, you're not going to be in fighting stance. So Donnie was teaching me, okay, what if your hands are here? How do you attack, etc. So that's why I really wanted to show you guys that segment. And of course, Donnie threw it so quick. Again, I wasn't anticipating he was actually going to hit me, but still, real life situation, I would have been clocked, right?
Yeah. And the thing is that like you see boxers do this all the time. Some boxers, they'll have a lead hand that's really low. Like Roy Jones Jr. was really famous for doing this. He would have a really low lead hand, and he would throw it up and connect with people because it's below their line that they're looking. They're looking at the opponent's shoulders, and they're trying to gauge what they're going to throw.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, a jab comes up out of nowhere and clocks you right in the face, and you're looking at the ceiling.
Yeah.
Kenpo and Kajukenbo are not the same thing, but they have similar origins and stuff like that. And when we were learning Kajukenbo, we were learning crazy strikes. We were not learning like, jab, cross, hook. We were learning like palm strike to the nose, grab the throat, rip the trachea out. We were learning kill moves.
Yeah.
We were learning special forces like kill moves. And you don't train those on like a opponent. You're going through the motions, but at the same time, you're obviously, you can't drill that with people to any degree.
Yeah.
So I'm preparing for this groin strike, and when I have to use it in real combat, then I'm actually going to grab this person, or I'm actually going to, break their trachea.
Yeah.
It's a really weird thing to practice.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I remember one of the first classes I took with Donnie, we were kind of doing some of those interesting kind of like strikes, right? And one of them was like a tiger claw strike. And it was like really weird because in Kung Fu we did stuff like that, but I never did it on someone, right? I always thought that was more dancing. But a lot of that stuff, if you aim it at the right parts of the body, can totally land and hurt them.
I am a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I love jiu-jitsu. But can you imagine you get into a street fight as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, you take someone down to the ground, and all of a sudden they start gouging your eyes? Because you've trained jiu-jitsu for so long, and in jiu-jitsu you don't train eye gouges, and all of a sudden you got someone in a rear naked, and they just put their thumbs directly in your eyes because you're not guarding your face properly. You got to be ready for anything.
Yeah.
So that means when you're training your rear naked choke, trap their hands. Put their hand down, trap their hand in your legs so that you only have to worry about one hand.
Think about kind of real life situations and real life extensions. So for example, jiu-jitsu, train it with what if they slap you, or what if they have shadow to view or sundown TE. They're training jiu-jitsu with knives. Naturally, this bridges into the next segment, which is, I'm going to show you all of it, which is Donnie talking about situational awareness, because that's a big part of any kind of street encounter.
Our phones, especially today, those are the most dangerous things in the world. You walk down the street and you're doing this. You don't know who's behind you, who's to your right, who's to your left, much less what's in front of you. Know your surroundings. Know that there's 4 or 5 guys standing across the street. Even if they're not presenting danger, know that they're there. When you sit down at a restaurant, I assess the situation. I'm not paranoid. I'm not going, oh my God, who's around me? I'm just simply asking myself questions. Who's that guy? What are they about? Who's sitting behind me? And then I don't have to think about it anymore, but I know I set my environment and my surroundings. Statistically, you're usually attacked in the street doing something that you do every day. And your guard is down because you do it every day. You can't let that happen. If somebody comes up to you in the street and is asking you a question like, hey, can you give me directions? Or do you know where this place is? Or what have you? Instead of going, oh yeah, put your arms back like this and da-da-da-da, and you're looking, and you're not guarded. Nothing is in between you and the stranger. What about this? Yeah, sure, I can. Don't let them in your space. Don't let them within your temple. That's what your protection is. And I'm not saying to not be friendly. Give them help. But don't go up to them with your arms down because you don't know what their intent is.
Donnie's talking about situational awareness, and Rob and I talk about it a lot too, because we're all on our cell phones. We've all had issues. I've talked about this at least twice or 3 times on this channel, but without heeding Donnie's advice years later in 2017, I was not situationally aware, and I almost had an incident, but thank goodness, like, something kicked in. I was like, oh, okay, it's time to fight the guy, and thank goodness he didn't escalate after I was ready to fight. But like, I was a situational aware, right? So if he just came up and socked me, I would have been done. So I really love Donnie because he's an actor. He's a very animated guy. He's showing you exactly what people do. Like people do sometimes, they have their hands behind their back or something. They hand their pockets, kind of like talking to strangers. Don't do that. It doesn't mean like, talk to a stranger like this or something, or talk to a stranger like this, but like just have your hands available if something happens. I love that. And then Donnie also said statistically, you often get attacked near your house, basically doing something you're comfortable in your routine, because that's when you're not guarded. And if someone's looking for an easy target, they're going to look at someone who's not aware, and usually you're not aware when you're in your comfort zone, in your comfortable surroundings.
When he was talking about just sort of scanning the room, I still do that to this day. When I go to a restaurant, I usually eat with my back against the wall. I don't usually eat out a lot, but if I do, then I will usually sit with my back against the wall. And that gives me a clear view of the restaurant, and I always know where the door is. I always know where the exit is. And the other thing is we were watching just earlier today some live footage of a crisis, and it was so interesting to see how people respond during a crisis and how few of them are actually looking actively around to see if anything else is posing a threat. So one of the things you can train yourself to do is when something goes down, to be cognizant enough to look around, assess the situation, remember details, because it's likely that when your adrenaline is jacked that you're going to forget a bunch of stuff. And if you are not present enough to say, okay, I want to remember these things that could potentially lead to a witness testimony later on, then that way you'll sort of be better prepared for it when it happens. But you definitely need to train yourself for those scenarios.
Yeah.
How do I get out of a dangerous, scenario? As a teacher, as a college teacher years ago, even though this is an uncomfortable thought, I would have to ask myself, what would happen if a gun person, gun woman, gun man came into this classroom? How would I handle it? What could I do? What could I not do? So those are things that you have to ask yourself before they happen, because once they happen, there's no thinking.
Yeah.
You're just going to resort to the highest level of training that you have.
Exactly. Another thing I would say is part of situational awareness is it helps you spot danger before it's even there. Like today, I went to get an MRI on my neck just to check up on my neck because I've had injuries. Mm-hmm. And I was walking behind a person, and I noticed the person just very quickly darted across the street. It was a busy road, and he darted across the street. So that immediately, it was like the first time, okay, there might be something going on. And then I took 2 more steps, and I saw there was some pretty crazy person just like swinging randomly in the air. So I was like, okay, I understand why he went that way, but the problem is now the traffic was coming. I would get hit by traffic. I went that way too. So I literally had to back up and go the other way. Not going to take a risk, right? But like that's what situational awareness taught me. Imagine if I was on my phone or in my own world, I didn't see the guy in front of me dart that way. Then like I would have walked into potentially some guy, going like this. Maybe he would have seen me, and then I would have had to like. Yeah. I don't want that, especially right before an MRI. I want to go get an MRI and see that I have nothing wrong with my neck. Not like, oh yeah, you have something wrong with your neck.
Yeah. If you have some sort of systematic thing to fall back on, it's going to be way better than if you're just sort of whimsically sort of doing instinctual reactions. A large individual walking down the street, you don't know that person. You're going to want to ask yourself, okay, like worst case scenario, what can I do? Yeah. Where is the weak point that I could potentially exploit? Is it the knee joint, trach slap? What is it, that you could potentially resort to if you had to?
It's not about being paranoid, okay? It's not like, oh my God, every person is going to attack me. It just, at the back of your head, you always have to have a plan of action. And I personally think of it as it's just like a fun exercise to do. Like when you're walking around, instead of like wanting to get distracted on your phone, just like look at every person that passes you. Be like, okay, what would I do if that person pulls out something or that person like yells at me? What would I do? Just like in the back of your head, just like practice.
What type of person do you want to be?
Yeah.
In a crisis situation, you want to be the type of person that actually helps people escape.
Yeah.
Or helps people live. It's highly unlikely that other people are going to be considering these things.
Yeah.
So if you're the person that is anticipating something like this, then when it actually does happen, you'll have at least a head start.
Things to keep in mind when doing a good Kenpo technique are canceling width, height, and depth. The width of your opponent, the height of your opponent, and the depth between the two of you. So if you keep that in mind, you'll always have a good solid street self-defense technique, especially if you can cancel 2 of the 3 out from your opponent. If I stop learning, how can I continue teaching? I always remind my students, not only while I'm teaching you am I learning, but I'm also going to classes and making sure that I take seminars and I meet with other masters and make sure that I share information and I'm taught information so that my journey continues and I can continue sharing with my students. Notice that your inward block lands here. Well, now that turns into point of origin. You don't have time to rechamber it to get to here. You go from where it is and you utilize that. Boom. That's right, that's right.
Talking even more about point of origin attacks. So this time, it's not just from where, but it's all where your hands are now. How do you like follow it up with an attack? Which is really cool because a lot of people think Kenpo, they think like 60 attacks at the same time or like a sequence. I think you ask any person who's done Kenpo, they're going to tell you, it's not that I'm going to do twisting fans or, whatever those like moves are. It's not like I'm going to do all 10 of those moves. What it's teaching me is point of origin. That's literally what a lot of those compliance drills are. So you're tangled with someone, you realize, oh, my hands are here, what can I do now? Kenpo people can correct me, but that's really what your compliance drills are teaching you. One, it's giving you a bunch of muscle memory, so if you get punched in the face, you're not going to just resort to like this again.
Yeah, speaking of just getting punched in the face, because that's where your highest level of training actually comes in. Once you get punched in the face, it's such a short circuit to like mode.
Yeah.
You're not going to be thinking strategically, your body will go into muscle memory, and you're going to do the thing that you've trained the most. Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou is a train. I mean, that dude is a blitzkrieging train. Tons of muscle, and he just came swinging forward with his chin out in the, in the breeze, leading way off balance, just swinging massive fists, which is what somebody might do if they were trying to attack you head on without a whole lot of training. Technically, completely unsound. However, he's such a massive individual that it doesn't even matter that it's technically unsound because, by the fourth swing, he finally connected, and that was it. It was like nights out. What is the highest probability attack that you're probably going to encounter? It's probably going to be some sort of bear rush like that. Okay, well, how do you counter that? Okay, well, you're going to protect yourself, angle off. Get off the attack line, and then try and figure out a way to counter. You have to have that down instinctually because you're not going to have enough time to think about it once that blitz happens.
Talking about point of origin attacks and all that, in Kajukenbo, there's a lot of that too, right? Because in Kajukenbo, I know there's a lot of compliance drills too. So you guys are training how to follow up wherever your hands are with different strikes.
Yeah, and a lot of it's high, low, high, low, high, low. So like you would trach, groin, and then come back to the head. So you would, basically like face, center of mass, groin, center of mass, head. And that way, if somebody's trying to defend this, they're having to put their hands all over the place. If you're ahead of that curve, you're striking to their face before they can bring their hands up.
Exactly. It's like in Three Stooges where Mo eye pokes Curly, Curly goes like this, and then he hits Curly in the stomach. Curly goes, oh, boom, boom, up low. Even the Three Stooges knew about that.
If anybody has any wherewithal of where Mike Kiefer is, I would be really interested to hear where he's at because that guy was so fast. He could do like 10 different strikes in like half a second. Wow. And I was just like, I remember thinking as a 10-year-old, just thinking like, whoa, what just happened?
To Kajukenbo people, if you guys know where Mike Kiefer, is he, what we call the Master Mike Kiefer, Grandmaster, Sensei Mike Kiefer? If you guys know where Sensei Mike Kiefer is, please send him this. We want to see where he is now. And if you guys want us to go back and visit Donnie Jeffcoat again, Donnie, Jared, and Tony, etc., and see where they're at now, and bring Rob there, maybe have even like light sparring too. Let us know. Maybe we'll go back to Shaolin, American Self-Defense Academy. Also, if you want to know more about why they have the name Shaolin in there, we can explain that in the future. It's a very funny story. For everyone watching, this was Fight Commentary Breakdowns. Let us know if you want a follow-up to this, because if you guys really want to, you can find this documentary on my other channel, Jerry Lee Films. Just search Shaolin American Self-Defense Academy. But again, that was me 5 years ago, and I look at myself and I cringe a little. I'm like, oh, Jerry was such a nerd. But then I'm like, I'm always a nerd, so it's okay. Part of it was like, oh, I'm uncomfortable showing you, but it's like, whatever. Show you guys. Rob, thank you so much for watching this with me. Man. I knew if there's one person I would watch this and like be able to discuss and get new information on, it would be Rob. So
my pleasure.
And look what he's wearing, by the way. Hey, this is his coffee.
Jaybird.
So if this video gets 10,000 views, maybe he'll send someone a free sample.
There you go.
Yeah. But until then, guys, make sure to go visit his channel. If you want to be that person to get a free sample, maybe you should tell him either on his YouTube channel or tell him on his Instagram.
Yeah, if we get 10,000 views on this, we'll pick a random commenter.
Yeah, or a random subscriber on Jaybird Coffee.
What should they write in the comment section?
Write a poem about coffee.
Yeah, haiku. A haiku.
Or write a haiku about Kenpo. So either a haiku about Kenpo or haiku about coffee. And if you do a haiku that incorporates Kenpo and coffee, maybe you're going to be the winner.
Instant winner.
Yeah, instant winner. Okay, guys, Fight Commentary Breakdowns.
Mr. Parker used the term alphabet. It's like learning a language. You have to learn the alphabet before you can learn how to spell. And once you learn how to spell a word, then what do? You create a sentence from that word. Once you create a sentence, then what do? You create a paragraph. And once you start writing paragraphs, you begin creatively thinking, creative writing. So that's the progression of Kenpo, and I look at that, and all my new students, I give them that outline, that idea.